Hello YouTube land, I'm glad to have you here on the Brenton Sawin channel today. I'm your host, Brenton Sawin. I got a special treat for you tonight. I was on his show, The Sharpening, which was Blog Talk at the time. Now it's on YouTube exclusively. His name is Josh Peck, and he has two books. One is called Disclosure, and the other is Quantum Creation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. We got together about a topic. He sent me a story of his, which most of you know that I have stories sent to me, and a lot of times it's shadow beings or aliens or all kinds of different things, which we would call demonic activity. And he sent me a story of an attack he had on him that was from a shadow being, and ironically, I kind of overlooked the fact what he was studying about when this attack happened. And I had been studying for a particular video, and when I touched upon the same subject matter that we're going to talk about in a minute, I had also a demonic shadow entity come in and attack me too. So it seems like to me, and also to Brother Josh here, that whenever someone gets onto this topic, they come under a resistance and attack. And we'll show you a few little blooper reels. It seems like there's something going on here, lights blowing and all kinds of things. I don't know, but we're going to get this out, and God willing, it's going to happen. And but anyway, I'd like to introduce you to Josh Peck. Hello, Josh.
How you doing? How you doing, Brenton? It's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me, and yeah, it's great to see you again. Since I think the last time we actually spoke face to face, at least through the internet, was when you were on my show.
Right.
Which it turned out to be a great episode. And I'll mention too, if people are interested in checking that out, they can do so at youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure. And the episode is called Brenton Sawin and Darrow Encounters. Right. So that was a really good episode. It was great having you on, and it's really good to be on your show and to talk with you again.
Yeah, I told you that we were going to do this sometime, and it finally, I think it's come together at the right time, and I'm glad to hear that you're still plugging away at it. And, well, anyway, we were talking after I read your encounter. If you could let's start with that, and then we can go into why that happened, and you can make the connection that I read in. I don't want to give anything away at first, but if you would start with your the encounter that you had, and just explain that without me explaining it for you.
Sure. So, well, this particular encounter, I've had encounters similar to this all throughout my life. This one was unique because of a certain aspect of it. But I've had encounters with shadow people through sleep paralysis and things like that all throughout my life. But on this particular night, I was laying in bed trying to sleep for the night, and all of a sudden I couldn't move. So it started off as like a typical sleep paralysis event. And in the corner of the room, I had my bookshelf in about a foot, 2 feet away from the corner of the room. So there was a gap between the bookshelf and the wall. It was just jet black in that little space. And when I was first looking at it, and this was all during sleep paralysis, so I couldn't move, but as I was looking at it, I just thought it was because it was dark in the room and everything, but I realized that it was jet black in there. Like, it looked like it was just a cavernous, like, just nothing. So all of a sudden, I saw this black, what I thought was just the shadow of the bookcase against the wall. I saw the shadow start to move and kind of form and unfold, and it looked like a person starting to stand up almost, except it didn't look like a person exactly. It was just a black humanoid figure, what would probably be typically called a shadow person. But this one was different because as it was raising up, it was getting clearer in definition. So I started to see that it was actually wearing a type of cloak, which I've seen an entity like that once before in my life. Which, if you want, we can get into that later. But so I noticed it had this really dark cloak on, and at first it had its back towards me, and then it turned around, and I couldn't see. The hood was about, it was over its face. I couldn't see its face or anything, but it was just jet black, the whole thing. And all of a sudden, it wasn't a thought I was having. It just sprang in my mind. It wasn't. It's hard to explain unless I'm sure a lot of your viewers might have gone through something like this. Unless you go through it, it's hard to explain. It's almost like it's a thought that just appears in your mind, and it's not. It's not yours. You don't know where it's coming from. But I got this thought in my mind that said, "This is a spirit of Antichrist." It didn't say the thought. It wasn't, "This is the spirit of Antichrist" or "This is the Antichrist." It wasn't anything like that. It said, "This is a spirit of Antichrist." Right. And I thought that was really strange and frightening. So I automatically went into spiritual warfare mode, which is usually what I do in these situations anyway. Since I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, so I ran the name of Jesus through my head until the whatever was paralyzing me at the time loosened its grip to where I was able to speak again, and then using the name of Jesus, I commanded it to leave. I said something along the lines of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. You're not welcome here. This is the house of God." Something along those lines. So it, as I was saying this, it turned and it started to leave, and then that's when I noticed the height of this thing was way taller than what my ceiling should have allowed. Right. But my ceiling looked even taller. My ceiling's maybe 8 or 9 feet tall. It's not really tall. We live in an apartment, but this was 10, 11 feet, and it wasn't going through the ceiling or anything. It looked like that the room was taller, but there's no way, it shouldn't have been. And I didn't notice that until this thing started to leave. So the thing left, and it actually went around the room to the door and left out the door. And it didn't open the door or anything. It just went out the door. And then I was able to move, and the room looked normal again, and everything. And the thing that really stuck out about that was, this wasn't too long after I had you on my show. I mean, it was a ways after. It was a few weeks or a couple months, well, probably a little bit more than that afterwards, because that was after I had my hip replacement surgery. But so it's not like this was in my mind or anything. But the thing that really resonated was that this ceiling looked taller, and then I thought, Brenton said something about that the room seemed further in one of your experiences, right. Or the thing that you saw was further than what the room should have allowed. Right. So by then I was familiar enough with your ministry and what you do, and I thought, well, maybe I'll let him know what happened, and if he wants to do something with it, great. But yeah, the main thing is, like, in any of those situations, the name of Jesus, you can cast them out with that if you're saved. If there's an unsaved person watching this and who's going through spiritual attacks, you can still try it. I don't know how successful it's going to be. It's kind of a crapshoot at that point, but really, you got nothing to lose. You just get saved, accept Jesus as your Savior into your life, and then you have access to His authority, and you can command these things to leave if they try to come at you. So that I do want to make sure that I at least say that part of it. Right. So that in a nutshell was the experience of a spirit of Antichrist. Right.
Yeah, and what was kind of interesting too, that how you noticed in my story how I had a doorway open up and the shadow being come into it, and it was probably 75 feet away to that door, but my room's only 12 feet big. So when you had this entity stand up and he's, way taller than your ceiling, but he still fits in your room somehow, the concepts of time and space don't apply to these beings. And I made a video here recently about these beings being able to come into your dreams and things like that. Like angels, good angels used to be able to come into a dream and give a person a message. So time and space doesn't apply in the same way. And in your situation there, he unfolds and stands up, and he's just way taller, and it's just so bizarre. The mind doesn't even know what to think about it. And where you were studying for something, and you were studying about a particular prophecy at the time, and you were making a connection to Nazis. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this was, I tend to be rational by nature as much as I can be with the types of things that we deal with, but whenever I have something like this, I don't automatically, I go through the whole process of thinking, okay, well, was there anything weird that I ate the day before? Could this have been a dream? Anything like that. And my first thought after this happened was, well, maybe just the research that I was doing got in my head, because I was involved in the research that I'll get into in a minute here. I was involved in it at the time, so I had to, just to be honest with myself, I had to think of that as a possibility and think, well, maybe it was because that was in my head and it just affected. But
right.
The thing that got me to think, well, no, was because this wasn't the first time that I've done this research. This was I originally did this research into this Nazi prophecy thing, which I'll get into when I wrote my first book, Disclosure, and this was years ago, and I have a copy of it here. I can show that if you can see that. That's my it's my first book, Disclosure, and that was the first time that I wrote about this Nazi prophecy. Well, at the time, I was just out of, I was a month maybe or so out of surgery from, hip replacement surgery. And so all the radio shows that I was invited on, I had to do from my bed. And one of the shows that I was invited on made mention of that prophecy from that book. And they said, even though we're doing an interview on quantum creation, which I may as well just hold up that too. This is Quantum Creation, my second major book. It's like my 8th or 9th book.
Nice cover on that too, by the way.
Oh yeah. Excellent graphic artist. So they asked if I would mind talking about this Nazi prophecy thing from the Bible. And even though it was from my first book, and I said, well, yeah, sure, no problem. So I was thinking, I may as well put it into a blog post so it gives the listeners of that show something to reference. So I was getting this blog post together. So all the research was really already done, but I was still kind of looking at it again and seeing if anything needed to be added, or because it was a couple years later. And so really that was the type of thing that I was doing, but I had already done all the research back when I wrote Disclosure. And the interesting thing is, when I was writing Disclosure, I was going through heavy spiritual attack, which seems to be the case every time I work on a new book. Heavy spiritual attack from the enemy, lots of sleep paralysis and demonic attacks, because these things don't like to be exposed. But there was something really, so if it happened when I was first researching this, I wouldn't have known it apart from any of the other spiritual attacks that I was getting. Yeah. For all I know, they all could have been caused just by that one thing, the Nazi prophecy thing. There does seem to be something about when you expose Nazism and how it really connects biblically. The enemy doesn't like that for some reason, and I think it might have something to do with there might be a future plan, maybe not exactly Nazis, but the main part that I was writing in the book was the section was called The Spirit of Antichrist. Right. And in the book, the chapter's called The Spirit of Antichrist, not a spirit, as in my attack. So I was writing about examples of the spirit of Antichrist. Of course, Hitler is an example. Hitler was not the Antichrist, but he was an example of an Antichrist. The Bible says there are many Antichrists in the world, and whoever denieth the Father and the Son, the same is spirit of Antichrist. So I was really looking at that and connecting it with Hitler for when I was writing Disclosure. And when I did that was when I came across this Nazi prophecy thing, which I can give you a summary of. So there, I'm sure you get regular viewers that are Christian and non-Christian, as I do. Yeah. So for those who aren't aware, there's actually a lot of hidden prophecies all throughout the Bible, and these come in. They come through in different ways, and they're deciphered using a variety of methods. But one hidden prophecy can actually be found in a pretty, it's often overlooked book of the Bible, the book of Esther, and it tells the story of an enemy that would that wished for the annihilation of all Jews, which that is a characteristic of the spirit of Antichrist. Esther 3:13 says, "And the letters were sent by posts into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey." So, not only is this a fascinating story, but there's also a prophecy that's actually hidden within the original text of the account in the original Hebrew. The book of Esther tells of the Jews' victory over Haman and his 10 sons in specific detail, which is where the hidden prophecy can be found. This is a big block of text, and if there was any way to explain this without reading the whole thing, I would, but I have to read the whole thing, because this is where and this also has a lot of Hebrew names that I'm going to do my best. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, so I'll do my best to pronounce them correctly, but it's Esther 9:5-14, and it says, "Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan, the palace of the Jews, slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Asbatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Parmashta, and Arisai, and Aridai, and these names, and Vaizatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews slew they, but on the spoil laid not their land. On that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, The Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee, or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, If it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done, and the decree was given in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. That's a big block of text. So to minimize confusion, we can break the passage down in order of prophetic events by first mention. So we're first told that the Jews defeated their enemies, which totaled to 500 men. Next, the names of Haman's 10 sons are listed, and we're told that they were defeated as well. We're then told that the king was informed of the number of those defeated. Then the king asked Esther what request she had and promised to grant it to her. Lastly, and quite strangely, Esther requested that tomorrow let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows, to which the king made good on his promise by commanding it to be done, and so it was. Haman's 10 sons were already dead, so why would she want them hanged again? That's the first question. But the word morrow in Esther 9:13 comes from the Hebrew word mahar, and can mean either tomorrow, literal tomorrow, the next day, or time to come, just some time in the future. Queen Esther may not have been making this request for the following day, but may have been making a prophetic statement. So we have two possibilities. Either Queen Esther wanted to wait until the following day and rehang the corpses of Haman's 10 sons for some strange reason, or she was prophesying that this same thing would happen again at some point in the future or the time to come. So for obvious reasons, I lean toward the latter. We can find further evidence of this by looking at the original Hebrew text and how the names of Hebrews' sons were listed out in Esther 7:9, and this is where this prophecy really takes shape. You'll love this. There's actually a specific date given. There are 4 Hebrew letters that stand out in the list of names of the names of Haman's 10 sons. 3 of the letters are noticeably smaller than normal in the Hebrew text, whereas 1 is larger. The 3 Hebrew letters that are smaller are the Tav in Parshandatha, the Shin in Parmashta, and the Zayin in Vayazatha. Those Hebrew letters. The larger Hebrew letter is the Vav in Vayazatha. So in the Hebrew language, each letter of the Hebrew alphabet actually has a numerical value as well. We have an alphabet, and then we have our numbers, and they're separate. In Hebrew, they were the same. So Hebrew letters can also be numbers. The study and calculation of those numbers to gain deeper insight is called gematria. And a lot of times when I point that out, people automatically will say, well, that's an occult practice. And yeah, it is, but before it was an occult practice, it was a very normal practice.
Right.
In the Hebrew language, you can't, the letters are numbers, so there's no way around it. Satan will take things of God and twist it and make it occultish. Like astrology is occultish, but when we look in the book of Genesis, God says that He created the stars for signs and things. So the enemy will take things like that and twist them around. So anyway, when we add those numeric values of the 4 Hebrew letters that are unusually sized in the original text of Haman's sons, we come up with the number 5,707, which actually corresponds to a Hebrew calendar year. The year 1946 AD would be the same as the Hebrew year 5,707, according to the Hebrew calendar. So it seems through this revelation we're given a year for the judgment of Haman's future sons. The 7th day of Sukkot, which is also called the Feast of Tabernacles, it's called Hoshana Rabbah. And interestingly enough, Hoshana Rabbah is the last of the days of judgment. The Feast of the Tabernacles is outlined in Leviticus 23, 33 through 44. So going along with this trend in the days of judgment, that actually gives us the date that we're looking for, the exact date of a judgment to be carried out. Because remember, that's what Esther was asking for. So the 7th day of Sukkot in the Hebrew year 5707 would equate to October 16th, 1946. Now, the amazing thing is that on October 16th, 1946, 10 leading Nazis were hanged in Nuremberg, Germany for their crimes against the Jewish people. There originally were 23 that were on trial. 11 were sentenced, and 1 committed suicide before the sentencing was carried out.
So how many were hanged on that date then?
10 altogether.
So that matches up. Okay.
Yeah. That's what's so amazing, because there were originally 23, but 11 were sentenced, and then 1 committed suicide before the sentencing, leaving 10 that were hanged. So even though the sentencing was carried out by a military tribunal, for some reason, they didn't end up choosing a normal form of execution, like a firing squad, like they normally would have done. Instead, they chose for the execution to be done by hanging, fitting right in with Queen Esther's request.
Hey, You know that video that you watched of mine, that the pawpaw that I talked about in the beginning of that was a translator in those trials.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sure
That's
was.
Awesome.
I wished I knew a little bit more to ask him some questions about those days, because anyone who is against the Jews is antichrist, in my opinion. It's just not okay. I don't see how people can justify it. Even some Christians have been indoctrinated against the Jews, and it's just not good. Now, one question I do have is, I know that there's a numerical number for the Hebrew letters, and I look into Hebrew quite a bit myself. But there's also a pictorial. There's a picture for those numbers. Did you look at what any of those pictures were?
No, I didn't. I am curious to check that out, though. Yeah, that was in the original Hebrew language, which this would have been written in the modern Hebrew language that's used today. It's not like that. It's more modernized. But yeah, originally there is a thing called Hebrew word pictures, which are fascinating. And yeah, there's a lot of prophetic things that can be taken out just by. The cool thing about Hebrew is, if you understand what the pictures are, you just look at the pictures and you can get a general sense of what the word is,
right. Yeah.
which is really interesting. But no, I haven't looked into that. I probably should, because I'm wondering, now I'm wondering if there's something there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so it's traditionally believed that the German Nazis were of direct descendants of Amalek of the Bible, thereby making them literal and biological sons of Haman. That could be the case. It's definitely a valid viewpoint. Even if that's not the case, though, the 10 executed Nazis could still have been considered as sons of Haman, because they were clearly tied in with the same Antichrist spirit as the original 10 sons of Haman. And again, I talk more about that in my book, Disclosure. So that amazing and in-depth prophecy really does show a clear link between Haman's 10 sons and the Nazi regime, as well as establishes the legitimacy and accuracy of the Bible, even in prophetic events. I mean, there are people that will say that, the prophecies in the Bible are vague. Well, here's at least one, and there's plenty of them, but here's at least one where you can point to an exact date that's given, and it could not have been self-fulfilled. There's just no, how would somebody set that up? It was foretold by God. So Haman's 10 sons in the Nazi regime were both led by that same spirit of Antichrist. And when the biblical notion of the spirit of Antichrist is fully understood, and again, that's not to be confused with the biblical end-time figure known as the Antichrist with a capital A. We're just talking about the Antichrist spirit. We find that the evidence of that, it's not only found within the Esther prophecy. Further evidence can be found that by merely looking at the actions of Haman's 10 sons and Hitler's Nazis, both wanted the utter destruction of the Jewish people and attempted to carry this out within their own time period, and that is an absolute characteristic of the spirit of Antichrist. Hatred of the Jews and their want, especially the want for their destruction, that's spirit of Antichrist all over. And they're just like when John wrote, there are many antichrists in the world today. Well, even today, there are many antichrists, as you mentioned, that there are people that are really against the Jews, and whether they know it or not, they're being manipulated by a spirit of Antichrist. The one that I saw. Yeah, go ahead.
If you deny that God has a son, that's Antichrist, because he is the Christ. He's not just Jesus, but he is the Christ, and we see that all around Israel now. And another prophecy that I see in the scriptures is that Israel would become a nation in a day. There is no other nation that's ever existed that was able to become a nation in one day before. Yeah. So to me, the Bible is chock full of accurate things that are just impossible. I mean, there is no possible way for any nation to ever establish legitimacy and to become a nation. If you ever had political science, you understand how hard that would be for that to happen, and the Bible declares it, and it happened. Is to me is one of the most fascinating prophecies in the Scriptures, other than the coming of Jesus, and his soon return, I believe. But anyway, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. You're absolutely right. I mean, it would be the Jews getting their land back could be comparable. Actually, there's more of a chance of the Native Americans marching up to Washington D.C. and saying, "Well, we want our country back. We want to establish our own government. And we want you guys out of here," and then actually having that happen. Right. There's more of a chance of that happening than there should have ever been of the Jews reclaiming their land, because they were spread out everywhere. Right. And it's such a small, it's such a small nation, and everybody, the British had it for a long time. Everybody wanted to control this place, but God had it set up at a point in time, and I don't have the information in front of me right now, but you can actually find the exact date of the Reformation of Israel in the Bible as well. And it's really interesting. These things were set in place by God before they happened. God being outside of time and space has the ability to do that, and just obviously because He's God. But going along with the what I was saying about the spirit of Antichrist, I believe that, like, when I had that encounter, I had that thought that just sprang in my mind, and I don't know if it was from this thing or if it was from God, or I don't know where I just know it wasn't from me. But right. In my mind, it said, this is a spirit of Antichrist. It didn't say the spirit. It said a spirit. So I believe if there are, outside of God, there aren't any spirits that can be in like more than one place at one time, or like Satan can't. They're not omnipotent or omniscient or anything like that. So I believe that if multiple people can be affected by the spirit of Antichrist, well, there's probably more than one entity that is doing that, and I think that it's possibly a class of demon or a class of fallen angel, to be more specific. Then they collectively are the spirit of Antichrist, but they have that attribute. That's their job. Spiritual entities, which is something that I wrote about, or I am writing about in my new book, Cherubim Chariots. They're not just classified by what they look like. In our 3 dimensions of space, if we know a cat's a cat because it looks like a cat. Well, it doesn't really work with spiritual beings or extra dimensional beings, because they can pretty much look like whatever they want. Now, there are some that have special characteristics and do look like certain things. Like a good example is what you saw. But a lot of times, like in the Bible, especially when we get into like classes of angels and things, they're identified by their job. Like the cherubim are identified by their purpose to protect things or to protect something. Yet cherubim can look different and can be like amalgamations of different animals and people and things. So I believe that the job of this spirit that intruded into my life, that job was Antichrist. It was a spirit of Antichrist, and I think there's a lot of them out there, evidenced by what John said, what John wrote, and just look around. I mean, there's more than one person in the world that's against the Jews. There are entire nations.
Yeah, the shadow entities are interesting. In that they have no light in them at all, so for you to have heard that is a spirit of Antichrist, when Paul said many Antichrists have gone out into the world, anything that is opposing to that degree of Christ, you would think that there would be no light in them at all. And when you have people that have near-death experiences and things like that, and they see the Lord, how He glows of light. And I've heard of people having near-death experiences and said they could see when they were standing there in the darkness because they were emitting a little light. If you have a little light in you, you're going to emit a little light. And these spirits of Antichrist, remember when Jesus, He talked about some of these beings, and they had no light in them at all. They were full of darkness. And there's several different things in the Scriptures that indicate that there's some types that have no light whatsoever, and they're just completely, dark. And I also know, like you were just saying, that whenever the Bible talks about that Satan himself can transform into a minister or angel of light, and then also he can also do that to his ministers. So there's another type of being there. But that word transform in the Greek actually means to change actual form. So they can shapeshift and what have you. And that one that I saw actually did change its shape, but he can't change his light.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So now Satan somehow or another, Lucifer himself, now they can do appear that way, but there's a certain class of them that have no light in them, and they may be able to change shape, but they're not going to emit any light because there's none in them at all. They're full of darkness, and there are some things in the scriptures that talk about these beings being wrapped in darkness and things like that, and I thought about digging in and studying a little bit more about that. But this Nazi thing, it seems like whenever I've tried to study and I go towards that way, it seems like it just is so evil that it just attracts that kind of stuff, because they don't want you to expose anything having to do with Nazism, any kind of Nazi stuff. And I was watching some videos by Jim Wilhelmsen, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, but you seen some of his stuff, and he was talking about it.
I know him.
Right? Yeah. Well, I thought maybe you did too, because I was thinking maybe you've interviewed him or something. But he was talking about there being an end time deception that uses Nazi technology advancements that they were working on. To do a fake return of the Lord and fake these, what he called like clouds of heaven, the Merkava in the Hebrew, that was a living type cherub that transported these thrones and dominions and things like that, are basically angels. The Lord rides on a swift cloud and things like that in the Bible, but there also in the Psalms it says the Lord rode on a cherubim.
Yeah.
And so there's a special type of angel that is that looks similar to what a UFO might look like, and the Nazi issue or whatever's going on with that, he claims that they took that technology through Operation Paperclip and what have you, and they're going to try and duplicate that, because Satan wants to duplicate everything that God has done and is going to do, and So you know him then. You probably know more about it than I do.
Jim's a really good friend. I was originally, this was a couple of years ago, I was interested in Hollow Earth, and I was researching something for that, which led me to Jim's research, and I ended up getting a hold of him. So I watched a couple of his videos, really liked him, and I wanted to see if he would let me interview him for a book or something that I was thinking of writing at the time. Never ended up writing it because I started writing something else instead. But anyway, it turns out he only lives about an hour away from me. So
wow.
So I had him over. Yeah, I had him over my house. We've done a couple videos together, and I've had him on my show a couple of times. I've gone to see him give presentations at his church. He's a great guy. I love him to death, and he's got a lot of really good information. And if people are interested in checking him out, his website is echoesofenoch.com. I highly suggest his stuff. But going with what you were saying, that there's a class of angel that looks like these things. When we read Ezekiel. And this is fresh in my mind now too, because this is all going in my next book, Cherubim Chariots. So it falls right in line with what we're talking about. In Ezekiel's vision, in chapter 1 of Ezekiel, he talks about he talks about this living structure, which is these cherubim that has the throne of God on top of it. But he also talks about these wheels. And the interesting thing about these wheels, it says it's a wheel within a wheel, and it's full of eyes all over. And, there are some that within the ancient astronaut, community that'll say, well, those are probably windows, or, he's just trying to use the language of his day to best describe. Hebrew has words for window. They have words for, porthole or door, or, he saw, if it says eyes, he saw eyes. And so, but the interesting thing about this is, these wheels if you can imagine a wheel inside of a wheel, and I believe it doesn't come right out and say it, but I believe that the text shows that it's crossed, so kind of like that, wheel within a wheel, and full of eyes around the rims, because it does mention the rims, and it has spokes. That's what this thing looked like. When you look into the Hebrew, it's actually a class of angel called the Ophanim. And that's something that I found that was really interesting. A lot of ancient, church back in history have talked about that, that they fall in the class of angels somewhere, like probably right under cherubim. So they're called the Ophanim, and when the Bible talks about angels that fell, it's not specific which type of angels fell. It just says that they fell. It may not have been all one class. There might have been a lot of different kinds of types of angels that fell. Perhaps some, if there are more than 4 Ophanim in existence, because Ezekiel mentions 4, and those are around the throne of God. Those are the good guys, but if God created more than that, and that just fall, they're just some of the angels that, and if some of those made the decision to fall, that might help explain some of the UFO sightings that we're seeing. Because if you imagine what that would look like from far away, but up in the sky flying around, that's pretty similar. So there's a possibility there.
Yeah, and some people think, and I think Jim's one of them, who thinks that a lot of the UFO sightings that we have in this day and age is from the technology that the Book of Enoch mentions that has been given to men, and they're doing this behind the scenes, and that's why he's really hung up on the Nazi thing, which it sounds so plausible to me that because I know this stuff's happening in this world, and I know that they have technology. In my encounter I had with that Darrow thing, he had something that looked about like that he stuck to my head. Why would they need something like that? It was some kind of device. It was some kind of technology. So they, if these angels, if they're thousands and thousands of years old, they would know science better than any human would, and so it's completely plausible. Whenever I was studying for a video on, they had dug up this wand, and it was basically a staff, and they said it was a magic wand or a staff that a high priestess used, So I thought I would compare staffs, like Moses' staff and this sorcerer staff in the scriptures, where Moses' staff, he threw it down, and the pharaohs threw theirs down, Pharaoh's magicians threw theirs down. Just kind of was digging in to thought I could make a cool video out of it. And I ran across some Hollow Earth stuff. This guy, his last name is Lytle. I can't remember what his first name is at the moment. But he wrote this book called The Coming Race. Boy, and that just screams of Nazi there. And this was back in 1890, something like that. So it was before Hitler. But someone had stumbled going in through a mine, and they ended up stumbling into a race of angelic beings that had been there since pre-flood. They went underground to escape a flood, and they had these rods that they had a power that they used. It was some kind of technology or something that was called Vril Yah. And the actual beings were called Vril Yah. And if you think about Yah, so there's something in the Hebrew there that tries to put them in the God class. And this Vril was an actual power that they could animate inanimate objects with this power. And I think that's maybe, I was making the Hitler connection because he had the Vril Society and stuff like that, and they were actually trying to supposedly get access this power to animate inanimate objects, like their UFO program stuff or the Bell and all those kind of things. Whether it's true or not, I don't know for sure. But whenever I touched on that subject and I started digging in for it, I basically ended up attacked. And then when you talked about you got attacked when you made that Nazi connection, that just stood out to me, is that there's something there whenever you're going down the road that you're on to something, it seems like there's a huge resistance, because it made me not want to study it no more. I was like, well, heck with that. I'm done studying that subject. You know, I didn't want, because I was in the recliner in the living room. I got kicked out of bed for snoring, and I was laying down. I was trying to get comfortable in the recliner, and you know, because Dana had to get up in the morning to go to work, so I didn't want to keep her up. So I said, you know, I'll go in here and sleep in the living room, and you know, everything will be all right. Well, I was laying there, and I was trying to get comfortable, and I was kind of moving around. I was not even sleepy. I wasn't tired or anything, but I opened my eyes, man, and there was a dark being standing there, and he was kind of a little bit different in that shadow being in Hollow Earth Mine Encounter with Darrow. This being, he was solid black, like made of dark matter, but I could see the wrinkles and creases, and I could see his eyes. He had like yellow eye, or like a dirty white, almost a little bit yellow irises. I mean, the detail on him, it just looked, it looked so detailed, you know, and it kind of freaked me out. So the whole recliner flipped back, and I flipped out of the recliner, and when I got up, you know, because I jumped, so I flipped the whole recliner over, you know, and I jumped up, and he was gone. And then I was nervous to go back to sleep, and I was like, man, I ain't studying that stuff no more. You know, I'm not even going there, because I thought, well, maybe I've just tapped into something too evil, and God don't want me to study that. Or maybe it's a resistance to come, because he looked like he was sneaking up, and he was starting to lean over me to use that trance ability that I talk about in some of my videos. They have some kind of power, like when the angels used to smite people with blindness and stuff, and it says they weary themselves to get to the door, like with the case with Lot and the angels that were there. So they have an ability to smite you with something that paralyzes you or freezes you up, or you can't remember, and it just screams of all the abduction scenarios and all the sleep paralysis scenarios. Or with the case like Elijah and the servant, those chariots came down, chariots of fire, and they smote a whole Syrian army, and they took that whole army over to the next town. Elijah led them there. And then Elijah says, okay, God, open their eyes. And then all of a sudden the whole army realized they were in the next town over, standing there in front of the king of Israel. So it just has the exact same feel to it as this abduction stuff, and it just seems to always lead right back to that paperclip stuff and the Nazi stuff, because our space program and things like that, a lot was run by former Nazis, so all the things we know about the subject when it comes, other than just theory, comes from Nazis. You know, and I think maybe even the flap that happened after the World War II might even have been us testing stuff that we were doing. You know what I mean? And they're trying to cover it up. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's a really interesting prophecy you have there, man, and I've never heard that before. So I appreciate it. Anyway. You have your show that's on YouTube now, right?
Yeah, it's called The Sharpening. It's at youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure, and then I have all my updates and everything can also be found. All my books and everything can be found on my website, ministudyministry.com. And I also just started a Facebook group for The Sharpening, because a lot of times I know who the guest is ahead of time, so I'll post that and then give people the opportunity who are in the group, if they have any questions they would like me to ask the guest, then they can post them and I'll do so. So I just started that. So anybody that's interested, it's open for everybody. It's facebook.com/groups/The Sharpening Show. So you can check that out as well.
All right. Would you be willing to come back on and talk about some of the other subjects and stuff that you interview people about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Because I know that you have some really interesting shows sometimes, and and I'd like to maybe have you come on and we'll talk about, you know, a couple different subjects or something, and what have you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But anyway, I would really like for all of you all to go check out Josh's YouTube channel and subscribe to him. And I would like for you to buy his books. He's got some cool books there. I know that I checked out Quantum Creation somewhat, and it's very, very interesting stuff. You will like it, and I'm sure Disclosure is awesome also. And then check him out on Facebook and support him, because he's another brother in Christ, man, who's out there trying to do the work that he's called to do. And I'm telling you, sometimes it's always a joy to do, but sometimes it's dangerous to do, as you know. I just made a video about coming under attack. And when you're exposing the enemy's going to try to take you out, because he doesn't want you doing it. So anytime that you go and you watch somebody's videos and you see an ad pop up, don't skip the ad. Watch the ad, and it helps him out and helps support his ministry. So buy his book, and also check him out on YouTube and Facebook and what have you. And I'll put the information up and put a link in the description. And anyway, Josh, is there any other good stuff you want to give us before we go?
I have hundreds of things, but we'll have to save it for next time, because I'll keep you up all night.
I appreciate you coming on, man, and anyway, God bless you, and the rest of you, subscribe and leave a comment, and share and like this video, and I'll see you on the next video. Hello, YouTubers. Glad to have you here tonight. I've got a special treat for you. Or let me edit that off. I was moving around, getting all jumpy and stuff. All right. Start over. Good thing about editing, man. I don't want to do no live stuff. You can believe that?
Same here. Yeah, I did one live show, and I only had 6 views for the live show, so I'll probably it's just not worth it. I forgot to ask, is there a time constraint, or how much time do we have for this?
Yeah, whatever we want to do, man. It's cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right,
cool.
All right. I thought about trying to like every 7 minutes, say we'll take a break, and then I could put the commercials in, but that'd be too hard to keep up with, man. I just put them in there every 7 minutes. It hits where it hits,
Good deal.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton Sawin coming to you from the Brenton Sawin channel. Tonight I've got a special guest with me. I went on his blog talk show that he had at the time. His name is Josh Peck, and he had a show called The Sharpening. He's exclusively on YouTube now, and you can find him at YouTube/Josh Peck at disclosure.com. And he also is an author of 2 really nice books, which I got one of them from being on his show, a little bit of a perk. But he has one book called, wow, Life's Just Blue or something.
Oh, wow.
Hold on here. One moment.
All right. Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna grab something to drink.
All right. Man, that sucks. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, man. I'm gonna stop it.